you smell what The Rock is cooking?
And we welcome you to another edition of This Is Wrestling. It is Lee Versage with the one and only Zach friggin' McGibbon. Zachary, late February. How are you?
Doing pretty good, Mr. Versage. Late February, a busy time here for me in Belleville, which I know you're shocked about with all the comings and goings going on in the Quinte region. But of course, over here, it is a provincial election that's going on. So you're also dealing with the provincial election. But I am covering the provincial election this upcoming week, so it's going to be busy. And on top of that, the regular season ends for the OJHL. The Trenton Golden Hawks finish up their season this Friday. And unfortunately, I know you mentioned last episode about the Markham Royals and how they could potentially upset the Trenton Golden Hawks. Well, unfortunate news for you, Mr. Versage. No Markham Royals appearance in the OJHL playoffs this year.
What a travesty of justice. I feel like I'm upset because that's an upset to me that they're not in the playoffs. Now, I totally understand how busy it is in Belleville. The second stop sign has gone up. It has wreaked absolute traffic chaos. There's, I think, more than one person running for something in Belleville during this provincial election, which is good.
I can confirm that. I was at a debate last week where there were 4 people up on the stage, so can confirm that.
Mm-hmm. Was it a debate, or were people just talking about the second stop sign and what to do with it?
It was a debate. It was a debate. They were talking about, different issues that they're looking to address, not only locally, but trying to bring it provincially as well. So
So I'm, before we start crushing souls, before we tell you about, I think, some exciting news from, some Ottawa and Canadian wrestling point of view, I need to get your take on this because you're covering the election. So I don't know if you've tackled this. I promise I'm not that big of a political person, but when I watch and I try to understand what I'm going to do from the different candidates that are out there, and then I get a text message on my phone, and pretty much everyone I know has got a text message from one of the candidates. And that is Doug Ford.
Ah.
Now, again, I'm just wondering, it's not about Doug Ford. It's about, to me, the invasion of privacy when it comes to your actual phones. I don't mind emails. I don't mind other things. But I think when people have your phone number that you didn't give out to anybody and they get them and they text you, I guess my question for you, Mr. Political Junkie, is do you think, like, they obviously think that helps, which that's why they're doing it. So I understand that point of view. I kind of come from the point of view of, like, to me, if I'm 50-50, that's actually going to hurt. Like, if I'm 50-50 on a candidate, I don't want them personally texting me.
Right.
I feel like that's an invasion of privacy. But maybe I'm not 50-50 and maybe it doesn't matter to me. How do you feel about just that world? Or is that all the same to you? And maybe all the same to a lot of people that are voting, the personal text as opposed to an email or the phone rings and, hey, this is Doug Ford's office or this is the Liberal office. Like, how do you feel about those type of ways of people being contacted?
Yeah, I don't personally love it. Just from any sort of candidate that would send a text, I'm much more of the put it into the email and just leave a little flyer in the email so that it could be caught by my spam box. This isn't new per se. Like, I think it is newer for Canadians, but I know in the States there have been a couple of politicians, both Democrat and Republican, that will send out texts saying, "Oh, we need your support for the upcoming election." And I don't personally love it. If you're going to do that, like, I know the door-to-door approach is an old school approach, but I much rather kind of meet the candidate in person as opposed to, sending me a text during the middle of the day and then having the little icon at the bottom saying text no so that you don't receive further messages. Like, well, I'd never signed up in the first place to receive these messages, so I don't love it. I don't love it, and I've heard from other people too that I've had family members also that had, you know, stuff reached out to them and they never signed up for stuff, and one of them thought it was a spam thing because they just never signed up. So I don't think it really works as well as they think it works.
Yeah, I think it's the philosophy of it, right, that I'm intrigued by, because they're doing it because they do think it works. And smarter minds than me are kind of into that and would know. But all I'm saying is, from old man on my lawn guy, if I'm 50-50, no matter who texts me, I'm not voting for you. And that's it. Like, if I'm 50-50. Now, you would hope that I would look into things more at this point, that I wouldn't be 50-50. And I would tell you that that's probably the case. All I'm saying is, just from the bigger point of view of, regardless of my personal connection or feeling about this texting, they're obviously doing it for a reason. And I'm wondering how much it helps and how much it hurts.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Because, again, if I'm 50-50, I'm not voting for you if you're texting me personally and you didn't get my number from me. That's all. And that just kind of leads us into, Zachary. So what we're going to do here is we'll have another episode coming out later to preview the Elimination Chamber, because we're on the precipice of a couple of big events with Elimination Chamber in Toronto, and then coming up AEW Revolution the following weekend within 8 days. So I think that's pretty exciting. But we'll cover some news. We'll talk about some of the shows on this episode. We'll look back to a little bit more on Grand Slam, a little bit more, like I said, into an Ottawa event, a Canadian star that looks like he's going to get a nice promotion. And we have to begin with The Rock and Cody Rhodes. Zach, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of lay it out a little bit, and then I'm going to let you start talking about this.
Okay.
Because I want to hear what you have to say. I'm intrigued, and I don't want to just, I guess, give my very strong opinion on this until after I've heard as much as I possibly can. So, Final Boss tells us that he's coming back to SmackDown. I was so excited. I texted you. I was so excited.
I could hear the slapping of the goosebumps from afar here in Belleville.
Yeah. I actually also texted you Bill Goldberg no-selling Bray Wyatt.
Yes.
Yeah.
I no commented that one.
Yeah, and then following on someone doing a tope to the outside of the ring in Mexico and kind of getting their head caught in the guardrail a little bit. I'm like, that's kind of how I feel right now.
Yeah. Very Looney Tunes style dive to the outside and getting caught in the barricade.
Yeah. So The Rock comes out talking to Cody Rhodes and basically says, I don't want this and the title, and I'm not going to get the ring with you, but I want your soul. And basically, I want an answer coming up at Elimination Chamber. It's hard for me to get through this segment, Zach, but I'm excited to hear you talk about it, recap it, and we're all interested in what you have to say about The Rock coming back to his show, SmackDown, on Friday.
When I first got the news of The Rock returning to WWE, the mana that I was feeling, slapping of the goosebumps, I was like, yes, there we go. We're going to make things even more unpredictable for WrestleMania coming up. The Rock is back, and who knows what's going to happen when he comes back into the WWE fold. I was so excited for what was coming up. Not for the reasons that I think other people would be excited about it, but I was definitely very excited. And it's funny how you surmise this promo with The Rock and Cody Rhodes. You were able to get that across in a few seconds when this promo took about, 20 minutes? 25 minutes? It was such a long promo. Well, first, it was hilarious because it was like, he comes out, a very New Orleans vibe because they were in New Orleans. And he took Triple H's pop of announcing where WrestleMania would be next year. And said that it was going to be in New Orleans. And he did that while turning face and turning heel, I would think 16 times during this promo. Yep. Multiple times. I just read this quote that apparently Dave Meltzer said on his show that somebody told him that it was like the Big Show. He turned more times than the Big Show did in his entire career, which made me laugh. And then in classic Meltzer speak said, which is an exaggeration. I think it was only like 3 or 4 times in his career, which is like classic Dave Meltzer. But nonetheless, he cut a promo. He turned face and he turned heel. We went from corporate Rock to Dwayne Johnson to the final boss, The Rock, back and forth. He calls out Cody. And I'm just thinking back to some of the lines that were said during this. It's just, he says, Cody, you're a great champion. You're a great champion, but I want to take you to that next level. How many Instagram followers do you have, Cody? What, 1-2 million? That's pretty good. The Rock has 500 million followers on Instagram, right? And then you get the crowd going, ooh and ah, and blah, blah, blah. And then The Rock goes, Cody, you're a great champion. You're a great champion in this company, a great champion. And then he talks about how over the last year, The Rock and Cody became best friends, like very close friends. Very close friends. Yeah. And their moms gotten to know each other, and they show a picture up on the screen on the People's Titantron. And it's a picture of Cody Rhodes' mom with The Rock's mom. And it was just all the more funnier because if you notice in the picture, it had WrestleMania in the background, like from last year. So nobody could believe that these two had been friends, during that time. And it doesn't help when they have a picture of WrestleMania from last year to show, oh yeah, we're great friends. We drink with the tequila with each other. And The Rock says, you're a great champion, Cody, a great champion. But the Rock wants to take you to that next level. The Rock wants to help you get you there for your wife. This line always makes me laugh. I've been laughing at this since Friday. It's like, The Rock will help you get to the next level, with help get, take care of your wife and take care of your baby, which The Rock knows. It's like, right. Why did you have to emphasize that, Rock? I know your baby, Cody. The Rock knows your baby. Mm-hmm. It's so good. And then he says, Cody, you're a great champion, Cody. And then finally we got to the point where he says, as you mentioned, wants you to take you to that next level, wants to take you, to that main peak where The Rock is, and he doesn't want that championship. He wants your soul. Mm-hmm. And then during that time, he kept stuttering a little bit. He kept calling Cody a great champion. He's a great champion, Lee, a great champion of this company. All of this in 20 minutes, and the best part as well is Cody is just standing there. How can Cody sell this, right? Cody's like, how do I sell what's going on right now? And he had the biggest lost look, like just looking around, like, oh, what do I do? I don't know. It was so hilariously awful.
Okay, so before you start talking about what it actually means,
yes,
I do want to ask you, do you think that this felt similar to last year where The Rock kind of poked his nose in at WrestleMania time and then everything changed?
Yes, absolutely.
After that, and does this feel like that again, or do you think they learned from last year and all of this is exactly what they want to do?
Oh, this feels not to the same extent as last year. Last year definitely felt like he dropped in and everything just kind of blew up on their face and they had to change things on the fly. This one doesn't feel as much, but it certainly feels like plans are being changed right now to accommodate what The Rock wants to do. with this Cody stuff. And so I definitely think there's some things being changed. I mean, we hear it in terms of like, the stuff that they had planned for SmackDown this week was changed. So I definitely think there is some changes going on. But I will say too, I for how hilariously bad the promo was, is still very funny. Just thinking of some of the lines and how long it took and how we kept going around and kept repeating our lines. There is like a potentially cool story here to work with. I think there is something there that they could work off of, and it certainly makes it even more unpredictable going into Elimination Chamber of what could happen. But I think the element of, The Rock being, a corporate champion when he started off in 1998, when they, replicated the Montreal Screwjob at Survivor Series 1997, doing that for 1998, making The Rock corporate champion. Now The Rock is essentially in that Vince McMahon position. They've presented him on TV as the guy that can make things change on a dime, on an instant. And so now it's coming full circle where now The Rock, who was a corporate champion in the past, wants to bestow and appoint his new corporate champion. And there had been teases for a while of Cody Rhodes potentially turning heel. This could lead to a new interesting element into that story. The problem is, I think the first step was very weird and it was very awkward. But in a way, it also makes it even more unpredictable. And I think that's what I was hoping for with The Rock showing back up on WWE programming to change things up. Because I think it could be interesting, some of the things, but it's also very much in Rock's court of what he wants to do.
So I'm the same way as you, just from a philosophy point of view, that I've learned my lesson from last year. Like, sometimes you think there's no way these big companies and the thought that's put into them and the new regime, and they book 6 months, a year in advance and all that stuff, that last year could be as big of a schmoz as it was. Shout out to Gary Galley. Love the word schmoz.
Very good.
But it was. And sometimes following wrestling, you're like, okay, is it a shoot? Is it a work? What's happening right now? Like, are they really in control of what they're doing and they're fooling everyone? And last year I kind of believed them that they knew what they were doing. And then you come to find out, no, Rock just came in and screwed everything up. And then they had to, recourse after that because the crowd and everybody else, the business was telling them that they didn't want that. So while I think they probably did learn from last year, I don't believe them anymore.
Yeah.
And I do believe The Rock coming in, he kind of does what he wants and they can have all the plans in the world and then he gets there and it's a little bit different.
Yep.
And I'm so happy you brought this up because one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize is how this made Cody Rhodes look. For the second time in a year, maybe not as bad as the first time when Cody actually had to give him his spot and then just took it back. That was one of the most embarrassing things along this run that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Literally giving him his spot after he won a prestigious event to earn that spot. I thought Cody looked exactly like you said. Like, what do you want me to do in this situation? What exactly do you want me to do? And how do you want me to act?
Yes.
And when your champion's standing out there for 20 minutes and got that glazed, how do you want me to look and how do you want me to act look on his face?
Yeah.
That's not very good. And you can tell me, you can tell me all you want. And I do think that they've put in some things along the way here to like plant the seeds of Cody turning heel. I think the way he stood over Kevin Owens and came back afterwards, I think some of the things that he's done along the way here have been a little heelish. So I do understand that, but this was not them planting the seeds of him turning heel. This was, to me, Rock's going to go out there and say a whole bunch of things and just roll with it. Okay, how do you want me to roll with it? Well, just roll with it. That's how it felt coming across to me.
Definitely felt very unscripted.
Yeah, and look, and I read a whole bunch of people's comments, and you do have to take, and I don't mean like fans. I mean, I read JBL, who was like, oh, it was brilliant. It looked uncomfortable. It was exactly the way they wanted it to look. Okay. You want to defend the business and defend all your guys? Sure. But I learned last year that actually didn't happen.
Yep.
The truth is that didn't happen last year. So why am I now supposed to believe because JBL said, oh, it looked really uncomfortable. They did such a great job. No, I don't think they did, because the way it came across to me was that Cody looked like an idiot again.
Yep.
And if that's how you want your champion to look, then mission accomplished. But I don't know why you'd want your champion to look that way.
Yeah. Can I also mention too, one of the things that Rock said that also made me laugh in the promo was when he was talking about his close friends, and one of his close friends was Triple H.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, really? You want me to believe you two are close friends? Because I'm telling you right now, if you guys are close, like The Rock said, The Rock probably isn't coming in and blowing up all your plans that you've laid out for the rest of the year to do his own stuff. I believe Rock when he says he's close friends with Nick Khan, because I believe he has been his agent for the longest time. I could believe that. I don't believe for a second that The Rock and Triple H are close. And yeah, on the Cody stuff, he just had this, like, as you mentioned, glazed look in his eyes, because he didn't know how do you sell this, right? like he just looked like a guy that was looking up to The Rock. It just came across so poorly, and they're like, oh, uncomfortable, more like unprepared is the way that I watched this segment, like, because they just kept spinning around on different talking points. Rock kept repeating himself. And it reminded me last year when The Rock was beating up Cody outside the van, which I guess that's, by the way, you could be friends after that now. I mean, good on them. They're
left him laying in a pool of blood and kept saying the same thing over and over and over and over.
Look at this,
over.
Mama Rhodes. Look at this. Look at this, Mama Rhodes. Look at this. I guess that Terramana tequila is stronger than I thought to amend fences and relationships. But yeah, it was all of that into this presentation. What we saw here, it was very clearly like it was very clearly unprepared, and The Rock's just kind of spouting off stuff off the top of his head. He's not the same promo that he was 20 years ago. So
I agree. And look, whether it was completely scripted and that's exactly what they wanted to accomplish and make it look uncomfortable, you can do that and you can tell me, but because you've screwed it up last year, and because now I feel that way again this year, I don't believe you. I simply just don't believe you. Even if you tell me it's true. I know what I felt when I watched, and I also know what happened with the truth last year. And those two things combined for me to go, you know what? I think you just made your champion look stupid. You wasted 25 minutes of my time, and I thought it was a ridiculous segment. Ridiculous.
Yes.
Now, the concept, as you said, and I want to be clear about this, the concept of The Rock coming in and wanting Cody to be his corporate champion isn't a terrible concept. Especially that it keeps The Rock out of the ring, but involved. I don't hate the concept. The execution and how they go about it is awful. But I want to be clear that I don't hate the concept.
Me neither.
Now, okay, so let's get past it looked unprepared and it was a waste of my time and all of that stuff, and talk about the concept now. We're going to do an Elimination Chamber preview a little bit later on in the week, and that's not what I want to do here. I do want to talk long term, though, about where you think this could lead and what the end game would be in 6 months from what has happened. Is it And look, I'll just let you maybe. I'll let you answer because sometimes, actually, you know what? And I say this about myself, so don't let me do this if I do this.
Okay.
It actually drives me crazy now when people who are interviewing and interviewers and journalists ask an either or. Is it this or is it this? And they let people pick one or the other when maybe it was the third one or the fourth one, or
Right.
they just didn't ask the question, like, what is it? How do you feeling? Like, they say, well, do you think it's this or is it this? One of the worst things you can do in
Yep.
journalism, because you ask questions that are open-ended so you get people to talk and you don't make them pick a side. Is it yes or no? Well, then it's just no. And that's all you're going to get. So I have a few theories, but I'll let you pontificate on this, Zach, and tell us where you think it's possible to go up until WrestleMania and beyond. Because I would think that this is a beyond WrestleMania thing.
Yeah, I would think that too. Moving past WrestleMania, where it could go. I mean, they could go the path where Cody doesn't accept the option at Elimination Chamber when The Rock will show up and he'll give his decision. Cody could say, no, I'm not going to make that choice. And then The Rock could pick somebody else. Who that somebody could be could very much be up in the air. And then you have a program where you get back to the roots of the story with The Rock and Cody, where they were feuding last year, but it takes on that different direction. So they could do that front. They could go full bore and, go with the continuity of, the little heel teases that they've been planting over the last little bits with Cody, and go full bore and say, you know what? Why not have Cody join The Rock, and then he goes into Mania as heel if you wanted to, and that could set up whoever wins that Elimination Chamber, which would very likely be a babyface. In fact, it probably should be a babyface to take on Cody, as opposed to a potential, face versus face matchup they might have been planning for with Cody. And you at least have the distinct, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, if they wanted to. So there are different avenues that they could go down. I imagine this not only continues to SummerSlam, but one would hope that with the dedication and the commitment, they love talk about stories in this company here, Lee, but how they love telling stories and AR cinema and all that, that this would be something that could take them through at least a year. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I do like the angle, the concept, as you mentioned. We'll see where it goes from here. I'm hoping it's a lot more focused, but based on first impressions, it doesn't seem very focused right now.
This is where I am going to not give them credit, but at least give wrestling fans and some credit that there's at least a theory behind what they're doing. I've debated a couple of different scenarios, but this is the one that I think is more plausible. I think this ends up not necessarily this week or next week or even at WrestleMania, but I do think that this ends up as some sort of Rock on one side. I'll give you the political spectrum here, okay?
Sure.
On the far, you pick left wing, right wing, whatever. I'm not putting the wrestlers on left wing or right wing from a political. But on the very far left, we'll say there's The Rock. On the very far right, we'll say there's John Cena. And smack dab in the middle is Cody Rhodes. To me, this ends up being that The Rock does not want to see John Cena succeed before the end of 2025. And with that, can he control Cody Rhodes? Because Cody Rhodes is the champion, and that's what John Cena is going for. John Cena is going to want his championship run and break the record and go out on the high and everything else. Is The Rock, maybe with the bloodline, but maybe with Cody Rhodes, going to try to stop John Cena from accomplishing all of the goals in 2025? The Rock and John Cena have a long history as well. And I don't, look, when I'm saying this, I'm not saying it because I think it's a great idea. I'm saying it from what makes sense from a business point of view. Just getting on Netflix, just having WrestleMania, John Cena is going to be around for a year. What makes business sense? Well, business sense tells me that The Rock and John Cena, the more times they're on television in 2025, the more Netflix is going to succeed. Throw in the biggest star now in Cody Rhodes. I think that's who you want if you're Netflix and the WWE on your television through 2025 to keep people going. I could see The Rock trying whatever he could do to not let John Cena win the title. If he has to use Cody Rhodes to be able to do that, okay. But at the very end of this, Zach, you know how I like to work. Yep. I always like to work backwards. What do I see at the end of all of 2025? Not at the end of WrestleMania, at the end of all of, I guess, the end of John Cena in 2025. What do I see at the end of that? I see two baby faces and I see two heels. Ask me what you think, who those baby faces and heels are. Guess.
I think the heels will be Cody and Rock. And I think the baby faces, one of them will be Cena.
Mm-hmm.
The other one I'm trying to think. Is it Roman?
Roman Reigns.
Ah, I see.
And I think this ends up with Cody as a bit of a heel, maybe full heel by then, but I think it's a slow burn, slow turn. Doesn't really want to go with The Rock, but he doesn't want to let John Cena win either. He still wants to do whatever he can do to be champion. Doesn't want to side with The Rock, but he's not siding with The Rock, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And eventually, how do we heat up Roman Reigns to get back up to the top of the ladder? Well, the very end of it, it's Roman Reigns basically pushing The Rock down at the very end, helping John Cena. John Cena leaves. Roman Reigns takes over as the big baby face. The Rock is gone. Cena's gone. And that leaves Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. At the end of 2025, as Cody Rhodes as your big heel and Roman Reigns as your big baby face, who has squashed and saved his family and squashed The Rock. And maybe The Rock gets the help of the bloodline along the way here to the new bloodline to be able to push those things down. Don't forget our boy, Jimmy Uso.
Jimmy Uso?
Yeah.
Oh.
Jimmy beat Drew McIntyre this week.
He did.
Pinned him. Roll up.
Roll
Jimmy,
up pin.
my man.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, oh boy is right.
No
Drew,
yeet.
what? Drew, what I don't care that you got your knee drained 45 minutes before that. You're showing everybody on social media to give you an excuse why you lost to Jimmy freaking Uso. Like, oh my God. Stop it. But Jey Uso being the champion, having a run, getting involved, this to me ends up with The Rock and the new bloodline and Cody as a full heel at the end of 2025. And it has John Cena with Roman Reigns and Jey Uso and probably Jimmy Uso after that big victory over Drew McIntyre.
Yeah.
Has them kind of saving the day from the corporate stuff. So I guess that's just my thought process. Nobody's told me that. I haven't read that. That's just my gut feeling because if I presented that to Netflix and go, I'm going to put The Rock and I'm going to put John Cena and then I'm going to mix in our biggest star, Cody Rhodes, and then I'm going to mix in Jey Uso, and I'm going to mix in the bloodline story, and I'm going to mix in the Samoans and Roman saving the day at the end of it and saving John Cena, and I'm going to give that to you for a year. Netflix is probably like, yeah, yep, sign me up. The more Rock and Cena and Cody and Roman on my television, the better.
Yep.
So my gut tells me that we're going to have a tweener Cody for a while. And then a full turn at some point much further down the road. And I don't know if they're going to plant the seeds. Like I said, we'll do our predictions, but I don't know if they're going to plant the seeds at WrestleMania with John Cena and Cody Rhodes, with the overview of The Rock. I didn't think John Cena was winning. It's not our prediction. I'm not telling you he's going to win now. I'm saying I was pretty sure he was not going to win.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming around on that thought because of what I saw on Friday. However, what do you think about that whole concept that I just laid out?
Interesting concept. I could see WWE doing that. I know you mentioned you weren't personally in love with it. It's just more what you could see WWE doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that in the sense that I don't really love it either. But in terms of what WWE could do, I could totally see them doing that. And, you know, I look at these Netflix numbers, these early Netflix numbers that are coming out, and they're not that great. So if you're telling Netflix, hey, don't worry, we've got The Rock and John Cena going to be on your programming for the next year, and they're involved in a major storyline, and that's what we're going to utilize them for. I'm sure they'll be very happy to hear about that and how they're utilizing some name guys. And then, like what you mentioned, you have your other guys that Cody especially been there every day, essentially. Roman more on a part-time basis, but more your other stars, and then having them utilized so that when they're done, they can then take over. So I could totally see that happening. I think it makes sense to Triple H's booking pattern, where he's very much like he stretches things out. I argue too long sometimes, a lot of time actually, but definitely sometimes. But he stretches it out and he just waits and he waits and he waits. But before you get to the big moments, so I could see that happening too. So I'm not opposed to it. I just wonder I truly do wonder though if this is how. If WWE has even gone that far at this stage, if they're just like, we're just kind of flying by the seat, more Dwayne Johnson than anybody else, if they're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants with some of the story stuff. But we'll see.
Yeah, which is a very, there's nothing I can say to argue that, because they haven't proven that they can look that long down the road. They haven't proven that whatsoever to me. So, okay. What? Look, and we'd love your thoughts. To be able to hit us up on the social media, you can always email versagelee@gmail.com. Love to hear your thoughts on where you think this is all going. Do you like it? What would you like to see? I'm happy. Like, I tried to take some positives out of it, that I'm not going to have to see The Rock in the ring. I'm already going to see John Cena in the ring a few times, which I really don't want to see. So the positives for me were that I'm not going to have to see The Rock. Let's talk some AEW, my friend.
Sure. You're talking about having listeners reach out with their thoughts on stuff.
What would that be?
Well, you see, Mr. Versage, our AEW superfan reached out with some thoughts about AEW Grand Slam Australia. And I know we're a week away from it now, but he wanted some points touched up upon in a very formal letter, I will say, to me through the X, formerly known as Twitter, DM on actually only a few hours ago as I read this. So would you like me to read what the AEW superfan Ben Soublier told me?
Yes.
All right. Course. So it starts with Dear Zachary, spelled correctly, by the way. So I very much am appreciative of that. The amount of times that people, I think this might shock some of the listeners, but my name is not spelled Zachary. It's spelled Zachery. Kind of different writing there. So I appreciate the correct typing of the name. The amount of times that it's been spelled with an A, I'd probably be a millionaire by now. But the note he sent along, 3 different points. 1, can you touch on how the Brisbane government played a part in the arena change for Grand Slam? This is in reference to an Observer report saying that the Brisbane government suggested to AEW to run the Subcorp Stadium at the start, the initial stadium that they were booked for, as they are getting set for the Olympics coming up in 2032. And so they wanted to, I guess, essentially like a test run is the way that it was written in the Observer, to kind of get things prepared for when the Olympics happen in 2032. I believe that is how that was written out there. And he also said, please reference that TK, Tony Khan, mentioned months ago that it wasn't going to be a pay-per-view as logistically it would present challenges. And he sent over a link of the media call that took place on November 22nd, 2024, where Tony Khan held that media call talking about Grand Slam Australia and how it was the challenges that were in place when it came to having the Australia show be a pay-per-view. One of them he mentioned was time zones, presenting a challenge in order to put it on conventional pay-per-view. And then one last little note that he wanted touched upon as a bonus, and I will give him credence on this one because I think it is a good point. If you could touch on the overall rating, including the lead-in following the slam dunk contest, that would be a bonus. So that was what was sent by our AEW superfan.
Okay. Oh, a lot to touch on.
Yes.
So what I would say is that he can tell me about a media call, or tell the world about a media call that really you got to be pretty big insider to be listening to media calls all of the time.
I was on a media call at one time.
Yeah, no, and that's great. Like they're newsworthy, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But as a viewer, if you had, when was that media called? November 20.
At least this article was written November 22nd. That I believe that was the same day as the media call, but around that
November. Time. Okay, November 22nd.
Yep.
Do you know what day that they confirmed that it would be a television special simulcast on TNT and Max? And airing on tape delay?
It was a few weeks before February 15th when the show was supposed to air.
Yeah, it was January 15th.
A whole month.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you knew on November 22nd that it wasn't going to be, why are you not announcing that it's like exactly what it's going to be until January 15th? Okay, I'll just leave that.
Yep.
Just leave that there.
And when you announced it initially, you said it was going to air at 8 o'clock and then realized, oh, it's not airing at 8 o'clock, and then didn't bother to readjust it for weeks after you announced that it was going to be at 8 o'clock.
Right. You actually didn't tell people anything.
Correct. After that, for a long time.
Okay, let's hit on then the number that I saw, and you can tell me that in the 18 to 49, I saw 502,000.
0.21 in the key demo.
0.21.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the total going up from last week's Collision, but I'm not sure for such a prime event that you've been touting not as a Collision, but as a Grand Slam big event. I'm not sure comparing it to last week's Collision and it being up a little bit less than 30% isn't, to me, it's just not like bragging about, like what? What are you bragging about?
Well, I think for the time that it aired, I think that is pretty impressive for the time that it did air. Like that demo rating that they scored is higher than some of the Dynamites that they've done in recent weeks. And that was done at, when did it start airing? Like 10:50 or whatnot at night? And that's not an easy TV slot to,
No, but you know this as much as anybody. You can tell me that it put eyeballs on the event because of the lead-in, and I understand that that's a good thing. That, to me, it's exactly what's happening in hockey right now. When I'm listening to all the American programs tell me, like the Colin Cowards, the Dan Patricks, the Doug Gottliebs of the world, telling me that they never watch hockey, but they watched this and it was amazing. The Four Nations final. It was incredible. And you know what pretty much all of them said after that? They're not going to watch again. So lead-ins are great because they boost the numbers up. And I get why people do it, because more people are watching, sometimes because they leave the TV on and they're actually not watching. So it's a smart idea, and they hit us right away with an unbelievable tag team match. Smart, 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 smart.
Absolutely.
But those one-off ratings with big lead-ins, like, do you know what aired after the Super Bowl on the channel that aired the Super Bowl?
I am not aware.
In Canada?
I do not remember, no.
Okay, it was Rescue High Surf.
Ah, well, there you go.
Okay, so if I told you that Rescue High Surf got a better rating that night as opposed to any other night, and then it dipped right back down to the same level that it always got, would you consider that a one-off?
I would definitely consider it a one-off.
Okay, so would I. So look, I want, and trust me when I tell you, I want these companies to succeed. I'm glad they got a bigger number at that time of night and all that stuff. But how many people were actually watching, and how many people did it actually convert? If you can tell me that it's an uptick in numbers consistently because people saw the tag team match with Fletcher and Takeshita against Ospreay and Kenny Omega, and now they're fans, and now they're still going to watch, and the numbers have consistently gone up, then okay, great. If I were running the business, I would have done that too. If I were running the business, I would have made sure that people knew when this event was on the entire time. But I would do the same thing. It only helps the business. But until I start seeing an uptick in the numbers after that, I really can't judge it. So I'm glad it did. I'm glad it got a little bit of a bump at that time of night. Great. Awesome. By the way, the NBA All-Star game sucked.
Yeah, it was not good.
And maybe people just left the TVs half an hour before that event ended. I would do the same thing if I were running the company. I just don't like. Good that you got an uptick. How do you keep the fans? How do you keep them coming?
Yeah. And that's something that we won't know right away, obviously, and I think you touched on it as well. That's something that we'll see how much it's kind of kept fans in. So that's something for a few weeks down. If it's just the same numbers that they've been doing, like right now, you look at the AEW Dynamite ratings in the States, and they've kind of settled at a point now. They're hovering around the 0.17 to 0.19. If they have a really good week, they might go to 0.20 or something, but they're hovering around that spot. And so if all of a sudden, like, they get into a trend and it's all of a sudden like 0.24 to 0.26 after that, and you can see the trend of it's like, oh, there's a little bit of an uptick and there's a little bit more of a viewership boost, then definitely. I think in isolation on that one night, I think you could look at it as, okay, they got what they wanted to accomplish. They got a big number, and they, with the idea of, hey, we're going to try and, attract some new eyeballs onto the product after this show. I think the numbers that they pulled at that time are really, really good. And so I think that's nothing to scoff at. The problem is now when you look into the future, it's like, what other event can you do that's similar to the slam dunk contest? Can you have like a big show like this that could be after, so you could pay off with a huge lead-in?
Right. And Dynamite this week, which, by the way, I didn't love. I mean, I did let Orange Cassidy and Roderick Strong was really good, but I just really liked those two guys, and maybe it was because I really liked those two guys. But the overall numbers should have been higher this week from Dynamite, should they have not?
One would think.
Okay. They weren't. They were down. Not much. 579 to 563, but they were down. I just don't see where it's translating right now.
Yep. And again, I think this will take some time on stuff, so I don't want to say definitively, but I do think there are positives to take away from this. I mean, I think I mentioned it last episode, but if they aren't going back to Australia if they didn't view it as some sort of a success, and especially financially, and the way that the show was bought. So I think there are certainly some positives to take away from that Grand Slam show. The show itself I thought was good, and I enjoyed the matches. As you mentioned, that opening match was fantastic. We'll see where it goes from there. I think they've learned their lesson not to listen too hard to the Brisbane government on having a show at Suncorp Stadium, if that is to be, believed. But even then, it didn't seem like, I'm reading through, it doesn't seem like it was like, this is part of the deal. It seemed like it was more of an advisement. And if I'm Tony Khan, I'd say, look, I understand where you're coming from, and you want to be a good business partner. We've seen Tony Khan do that with TNT and Max and all that over the last couple of years, especially going into the television deal where he's trying to be a good partner, a good business partner. But there also comes a point where it's like, look, I don't think it's going to work that well, especially when, as soon as it was announced, you heard all the people in Australia and Brisbane saying, oh, that's not a good time to run that stadium at this time with all those people. So yeah, I understand you want to be a good business partner, but there also has to be a point where you're like, hey, if we're doing this, we want this to succeed for both of us. And this still ended up being a success in terms of the arena business, because they are going to bring it back next year. So positives and certainly some things to work on for AEW for next year. So
Speedball, Mike Bailey is coming to AEW. We saw the vignette, and he's coming to AEW, and I think, well, for me, I'm really happy about it.
yes.
So your thoughts on Mike Bailey joining the AEW roster?
I love it. It took a little bit. I had heard that he was having some visa issues, and I think it's since been reported. that was kind of the delay because his contract expired in TNA, and when that expired, so did his visa. So they were trying to get that renewed, and obviously they're teasing him now, so it looks like the issues have been resolved. I'm very excited to see Speedball Mike Bailey in AEW. I think this would be a big step up for him. Going from a TNA and now being more prominently featured on a bigger promotion. I think that's the way that AEW should go. I think there's been too much of getting guys that have already been primarily featured on TV in WWE and bringing them over. I think now you got to supplement your roster with guys that are kind of on the come up, guys and girls that are coming on the come up and have not been exposed to a television audience. And that will take, scouting certain wrestlers and determining their strengths and weaknesses. But I'm big fan of Speedball Mike Bailey. I think he's a tremendous wrestler. Very excited to see him mix it up on the AEW roster. And Lee, not if, but when Speedball Mike Bailey takes on Will Ospreay in a one-on-one match. That will be fantastic. And if the rumors of Josh Alexander also being a part of this roster soon, that will also be pretty big. And plus, those are two Canadians, especially, the confirmed one in Speedball Mike Bailey, potentially with Josh Alexander. Two Canadians you could promote when they eventually tour, across Canada, whether it be in Ontario or Quebec, especially with those two. So I'm really excited to see Speedball Mike Bailey against a lot of these wrestlers. I think it's a new crop of guys that he could take on. And I think it's just I think it's going to fit well in this AEW system for sure.
Okay, so that's not funny that you say that, but it's interesting that you say that because I was just going to ask you. Why do you think Mike Bailey fits in? Like, if you've watched Speedball Mike Bailey, he's a good wrestler. But do you think he has the personality to translate on television on AEW and succeed? And I think there are some people who I know are good wrestlers, and I'm not putting Mike Bailey in this. I'm just saying that the example to me, whether people like it or not, still is Ricochet.
Mm-hmm.
When he talks, I'm just not interested. And I don't think even in this feud with Swerve Strickland, it's not translating for me as far as him being this personality on television. I think he's always struggled with that part of it. What is it about Mike Bailey that you think that can translate on television to a persona? Because we know he's a great wrestler. Do you think that his persona can translate, and why?
I think with him, in the case of AEW, I think he could reach a standard of in-ring that with the fan base that can accept not being as much of a personality. Like, for example, I think I think so highly of Roderick Strong as an in-ring wrestler, but I never bought him as sort of this personality type. But yeah, definitely not that stuff. That was their attempt to try and put some quote unquote personality to Roderick Strong. But he's just one of those guys that I just want to see go in there and have great matches. And I think with Roderick Strong, he was in the main event. He's still somebody where I'm like, man, like, I don't want to see him cut a promo. I don't want to see him do all this stuff. I just want to see the guy wrestle. And that's how I kind of view Speedball Mike Bailey. Now, I've chatted with Mike a few times over the years, and I think he's more of a character than people realize. But one of the things with that is that how can that translate to TV? I think that's I think that's going to be determined once he hits the screens. But you see kind of how they're presenting him. Oh, he's this big international wrestler, wrestled all over the world and had these great matches. I think with AEW, with the way that the audience kind of expects from their guys, that I think in Speedball's case, I think he's just a tremendous wrestler to the point where they want to see him on screen just to wrestle. And could that limit him? I don't see him being like a main event guy, if that's kind of the question here. But I could certainly see him being featured on TV and being somebody that you could throw onto the television and rely on him to go out there and have those great matches. So that's how I kind of view it there. Why I think he's a much better fit for him in AEW, because I think that's where the expectations lie more with the in-ring as opposed to him going to an NXT or a WWE where character is much more relied on than in-ring in that company.
Like Ricky Saints.
That's right. What a name. I've decided, Lee, that I am changing my name to Zach Cowboys as a ode to Ricky Saints. So
with an E.
That's
Good.
right.
Zachary.
Yes. Zachary Cowboys. Yes. That's right. I think it just works so well.
Look, what works well is when bigger names come to shows, and who's not excited for the fact that Gabe Kidd coming to Gatineau?
Yes.
How about that?
Big time get.
I'm actually really excited. Mystery Wrestling and Evil Uno, which he usually does on usually like on a Sunday when people are coming in for like the C4 shows, or but he's got Gabe Kidd coming in on March the 14th, or sorry, March the 2nd. Mystery Wrestling 14 in Gatineau, and this is a pretty big name. I mean, Ali's going to be there from AEW as well.
Yep.
But I'm pretty excited about Gabe Kidd being here. That's a big get here for Evil Uno and the wrestling fans here in Ottawa.
Yeah, I when that was announced, I was like, oh yeah, here we go. Getting that big name, especially coming off the Omega match earlier this year, which again, I highly recommend people go and watch that match because it is incredible. But very excited to have Gabe Kidd come to the Ottawa-Gatineau region to wrestle. Now, obviously, with Mystery Wrestling, we're going to find out who he wrestles that day and when he comes out on the curtain. So it should be interesting who they pair him up against and who they decide to have him have a one-on-one match with. And with the Mystery Wrestling gimmick, it'll be more on the comedic side. So, but they do allow for a lot of their guys, like, this is the guy that's going to go out there and have the great match. So I tend to think that's what's going to happen with Gabe Kidd, especially with the way that he portrays himself on TV in Japan and also on social media when you see his tweets and his posts. So big get. I'm very excited. And I think that's such a huge get for not only Mystery Wrestling, but for the Ottawa-Gatineau region.
And I love the fact that they're promoting it. It's a 5 p.m. Eastern start, 2 p.m. Pacific, but also 10 p.m. in Britain.
Yep. Worldwide audience.
Yep. They're promoting it that way as well. So I think that's pretty cool for Gabe Kidd to be in the Ottawa-Gatineau area coming up on the weekend. So, all right, Zach, I think maybe we can leave it there, only because unless you have something else that you want to get to here quickly, because we do have an Elimination Chamber preview coming up later on in the week.
Yeah, nothing off the top of my head. Just, I've been slapping my goosebumps since Friday. I've been feeling the mana. I am so excited for the chaos that will come with The Rock showing up at WWE and where it will go. Very excited. Feel the mana, Lee. Slap those goosebumps. Get excited.
No.
No? Oh.
Just no.
No? Oh, by the way, I was kind of hoping that Rock would promote another record gate and the crowd to cheer, but he did not do that in this appearance.
No.
Was waiting for that.
You gave us the biggest gate ever. You paid more money to watch us today. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, you're right, we did. Although he did say thank you for making Moana 2 get over $1 billion at the box office. So it was close, but we didn't get there.
Oh, well, so he did it personally, just not in wrestling.
Yeah, just not for a pop,
He just did it for his other career.
That's right. And he also forgot that he last spoke with Cody on the Raw on Netflix episode. He had to pause for a bit, and then there was the wait, and then Cody had to be like, Raw on Netflix. Raw on Netflix! That's when I last saw you, Cody. That's right. lot going on for The Rock.
Incredible theater.
This Lee, this is cinema for me. This is a movie for me.
It's unintended cinema.
That's what makes it great. This is art.
Yeah,
This is wrestling. That's the show.
You have to get to a council meeting or something that's like really, really entertainment laden.
Oh yeah, you want to talk about cinema? I mean, I'm excited for this council meeting. It's should be another one for the record books. Let's just say.
Yes, it will go down in the records as a meeting.
Yes,
that took place.
That will also be publicly available, so that they can read over the records.
We can go back and watch it too.
That's right. It's on YouTube. You might see my face pop up on the screen as I'm writing my notes down, covering the council meeting.
That's a This Is Wrestling cameo.
That's
fantastic.
Right. You never know where the cameo is going to pop up.
All right, so we'll let Zach get to his council meeting. We will be back in a short amount of time. I think coming up in a couple of days as we record this on a Monday. We'll get to watch Monday Night Raw, and we will set up, of course, the Elimination Chamber, and hopefully a lot of you that are listening are going in Toronto and can give us some firsthand accounts. We'd love to hear that as well. But the big Elimination Chamber, we do get Kevin and Sammy, which I can always use more Kevin and more Sammy in my life as a WWE fan. But we'll talk about that with our Elimination Chamber preview. And then, as much as we have been disgruntled with AEW, that pay-per-view Revolution coming up on the 9th is looking more and more intriguing as it goes along. So that'll be fun too. So lots coming up here on This Is Wrestling. For Zachary with an E, friggin' McGibbon, I'm Lee Versage. Thanks for listening to another edition of This Is Wrestling.